So I'm going to just turn off the display and selection flags, and I'm going to make a copy of this right now and dive in. So previously we saw that when we run this guy using pin to animation method, it's just going to wait there. So let's try and see if we can use alternative methods. So if I go to source one, I have this cohesion here. So before I use that, I'm going to go ahead and unpin the pin constraints and let it run. When I run this, the whole thing is going to just collapse because there's nothing holding on. I wanted to show you this because this could happen to you as well. I'm going to go ahead and turn these off. And this could be happening because I'm trying to use pin to animation is equal to 0. And I have turned this guy off. And that could be why, because that if you turn this off, pin to animation, I think the attribute doesn't exist anymore, but I can't be sure. So let's try it again. So there you go. Yeah, I think that's the reason why. So figured. Right, you can see here now the whole thing collapses, and that's not very good. By the way, despite the fact I've selected this guy here, this guy is showing up. And this is a viewport problem. So because I dove inside of here, for some reason this kind of happens all the time. So I'm going to close that, right click, go to viewers, and scene view again. And now it's better, but I want to change the background back to dark again. Let's run it again. So when I run it, it just collapses. So basically that tells you that pin constraints no longer work, and obviously I've unchecked it, but I want to use this cohesion instead. So this small amount is more than enough for this to work. So if I run this now, the cohesion will hold on to the points. Let me hover this pointer over. Let me stop this. Hover the pointer over here. Sets point attribute sand cohesion, which is sand underscore cohesion, and that is the attribute you will have to use in point wrangles and vex coding if you want to. Controls how sand wants to clump together. So basically when you add this, your sand is clumped together. And this is ideal for simulating wet sand. It also is ideal for simulating things like that. So because it's now holding on. But please bear in mind, this is only holding on because of the fact that we have a broader and wider base. If you don't have that, let's say that we have capybara, it only has 2 feet on the ground. This cohesion is not going to work. The whole thing is going to collapse. But for this particular model, we don't have an issue because we have a broader base, so it's holding on. So how do we use this now? Well, we can use this using the same method we were using before, which is going to transfer the wet attribute. And then here, we're going to say, instead of pin to animation, we're going to say that sand underscore cohesion is 0. So that's what we're going to use instead. Let's see if that works, unless it was an error. I don't know. You see, there you go. Now you can see the yellow parts that were originally holding on no longer holds on. It just drops. Now, obviously, this is happening at the first frame. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to change these the way they were originally to see what happens. So let me do that. And I want to, oh, there it is. It's coming. See this yellow part here? That is starting to fall, which is important because if you had pin to animation method, that will just hold on. So that is working. But now I am curious. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to 0 and dive in. I'm going to set this / means ignore that line or comment. That's just to add comments. If you want to, I think if you want to add a comment that is more than one line, you can do this and then close the comment section like that. You know, after that, everything will be accounted for. It's just wax coding. But anyway, want to do any of that? I at pin to animation is equal to 0. And I also need to enable pin constraints. So with the same setup, I've just changed that from sand cohesion to use the pin to animation method. And let's see, I'm just a little bit curious now. You can see here, that part here is just holding on. That's what I'm talking about, you know. So that's the difference between the two. I'm going to put this back now because this is part 2. So 0.01. And in here, I'm just going to kill that and enable that. That's all good now. All right, fantastic. So I'm going to make a copy of GO2 now. Let's try something else. So far, our water or fluid has been a single emission. So it's a next sphere, and it just drops, and that's about it. I want to do this continuously. So what I mean by that is I want to emit particles continuously from there. And let's change this to continuous. Now, if you're using Houdini 20.5, this might be slightly different. You could just choose continuous and leave the activation to 1. But if you're using 21.0 onwards, this is slightly different. But anyway, I'm going to just try it as it is at the moment, and we can see what happens. I want to highlight that one. So you can see actually it's working, so they must have fixed it or something, I don't know. But previously, I had to change this to f is equal to 1. So now it seems like it's working. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to just delete this. Let's make it a little bit better. So I want to add a mountain here, and I want to animate this so it kind of moves around like that. And I also want to move this in the Y direction like that. So to do that, I'm going to right click, motion effects, and noise. And now this guy is just going to sit there. And if I run this, you can see this happens. It's a bit too much. So I'm going to reduce the amplitude to 1. And let's see. Yeah, just to give it a variability when the liquid flows. This motion effect shows up here. So there you go. I'm just going to put it right next to it. So now you can see here that is now moving. That seems like it's working without any further changes, really. That's good. But the attribute transfer is a bit too much. So I'm going to change this to 0.1. I'm going to run it again. So you can see this is send cohesion method, and it's holding on to the points as well as the continuous emission is working fine. So while we're here, I want to just talk about this MPM container. The size is 10 by 10 by 10. I'm not entirely certain how this works, because if I were to put a box in here just to visualize, because you can connect that box in here to visualize. So this box is right now sitting right there. Now if I run the sim seems to run regardless of how big the box is. So, I mean, I might be missing something here. I do not know. So you just need to have a container, I think. In any case, I don't want to take any changes. So I'm going to change this to, let's say, 5, 5, and 5. And I'm going to copy the y-axis and paste it. Paste route to references in the center and divide this by 2. So it sits on the ground plane. And 5 is too much. You can tell 4 is also too much. 3 is too much. 2.5, maybe 3. Change that to 3 and that to 3. And let's run that again. So you can see it's working, and the sand will also just work. So that's that.